Well, good morning, everybody. I guess you can tell that it's a beautiful early summer day out in the shop. Absolutely gorgeous. So, like the good shipwright I am, or amateur shipwright, I figured I'd get to work and take advantage of this glorious weather. And I began by utilizing the epoxy that had come in. I got 2 gallons of it, so I started utilizing it yesterday and today. Yesterday, I went ahead and took care of all the plywood seams along the boat so that they are really tied together and strong, and boy are they. They're good and strong now. I also went ahead and epoxied the seam between the inner keel, the forward inner keel, and the plywood planking. So I ran a bead of epoxy down both sides of it, all the way up forward, starting up past frame A, all the way back to here, with that thickened epoxy. Not very thick. It was still pretty runny because I wanted it to run down the length of the keel, and it did. It worked out really well. So it's going to dry like that, and that's going to just further support the bow and create a better watertight barrier. I'm really pleased with how that came out. That worked out beautifully. So we're going to let that set up, and we're going to leave the bow alone for probably the most part of the day. So what does that mean? Does it mean that we're done with the work for the day? Of course not. Why would that be the case? So we're going to move to the stern. Oh man, that fan feels good. And we're going to go ahead and work on the stern today. So I might tackle some of the gaps, like right there, that are in the fuel lockers. Definitely going to tackle this transom back here, this area. Go ahead and epoxy fillet the crap out of that, and probably install our knee today. Permanently affix our knee. Remember what we laminated? So that's kind of what's on tap for today. If the good Lord's willing and the creek don't rise, we won't have any issues. So that's, like I said, that's what we got going on, and I think I can manage the actual back of the boat today. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take care of gaps and make some fillets and basically do all manner of epoxy that we can do. So that's, like I said, that's probably what I'm going to shoot to get done today while the bow dries. And once the bow's dry, I'll go up there and start touching up like gaps maybe along the frames or areas that need further reinforcement with epoxy fillets. So that's where we're at. And I'm going to go ahead and get to work back here, and I'll catch you guys up when there's more to talk about. Well, now that the epoxy is now applied to the inside of the transom, I even got to permanently epoxy the knee in place. So this is all drying, but everything's got fillets to include the sides of the transom itself. My little pieces of 1x down there are epoxied, and we're coming together. I even went around the shear and looked for areas where it may be standing off of the shear clamp, where the plywood's standing off, like right here. I went ahead and gooped some of that epoxy in there, just as a way of ensuring that it's good and steadfast and held. So I did that all the way up to the bow on both sides. So we're going to let this dry, and I'm going to head in for a little while. And tonight we'll come back out here because it should be dry by then, and we'll check everything and see how everything's set up. But I'm pretty excited with the progress we've done thus far. When this is done, and once again everything looks good, we'll go around and run some fillets maybe along the frames. And so I might try to engineer a way to do that a little more effectively than my spatula method. But nonetheless, looking good, very pleased, and we will revisit this evening. Well, as everybody can now see, the epoxy is set up pretty frickin' tough. I put this on earlier this afternoon, actually earlier this morning. Oh, early morning, mid-afternoon, and it has set rock hard. It is ready to go. The knee is good and in place. It is strong and tough. Probably run some screws in it just to make sure that it'll stay, although that's just more for my benefit. Got a little bit more epoxying done over here, as you can see, and it's set up real good. So the transom for the most part's done. It's all epoxied up and tough. Pretty happy about that. So I was telling you earlier today that I also did the bow. So we're going to walk up to the bow. Also, take a look at this this epoxy job I did along the chines, where we either had gaps or, in this case, a big knot that needed to be filled. So I filled that. But we're, like I said, we're looking great. We've got just about everything epoxied up the way I want it. I think the only thing that's left is to go along the frames themselves, along the upper parts of the frames that lead up to the shear, and then down to the chine. I'll probably get those, and then of course across the hull on the bottom we'll run some fillets down there. But we're looking really good, and she's a lot stouter now, I can tell you that. I mean, just walking around, there's no creaking, no groaning of wood. For the most part, she's set up hard. And if you can see, I ran a fillet all the way along this forward inner keel, from all the way up here, and I'm going to get my light out so you can see. And that's where it is. It ran all the way right there at the start of that at the start of the forward keel, all the way down. And I ran it all along, right along where the planking meets the inner keel here. And that's for stability and waterproofing. And boy, is she tough now. We could almost run over a whale. And I don't think that the forward inner keel would buckle a bit, or the planking. So I'm pretty excited about that. Real tough. So that's what we got done today. Tomorrow, like I said, we'll worry about maybe some filleting. I'm a bit at an impasse right now because I'd really like to use the remainder of this epoxy that I have and make sure I have enough to start laminating the deck. But I have to go get the wood for that, and there's a few other things that need to happen. But that's, like I said, I mean, we've made a great amount of success, a great amount of progress thus far, and been very successful with what we have done. And I'm very happy with the way that the hull is really stiffened up, adding these epoxy fillets along the keel, and then of course along the transom and that. So I'm real happy with the way this is coming out, and hopefully I can get that wood soon so we can start laminating. But that's going to be what's on tap next, and hopefully we can get to it sooner rather than later. But until then, I will catch you guys out, or I will catch you guys up on the build when we get that wood.